so happy we alive. Wandered, wounded, up a bloody dark trail, doing my damnedest, get the hell out of hell. Wandered and wounded, up a bloody black trail, doing my damnedest to bang the big bell, bang the big bell. I come from the Southwest, Derby City. I come from the Southwest, Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville, Kentucky.
Well, what happened was that I discovered that I had been brainwashed, like just about every other American citizen, that this was a substance which was, well, you can't say of any drug that it's not dangerous. Nonetheless, its toxicity was minimal compared to tobacco and alcohol. To make a long story short, I concluded that it was possible that the biggest danger from marijuana was the way we as a society were dealing with it, by arresting, at that time in the 1960s, in the late 60s, about 350,000, mostly young people. Now, after the Scientific American article came out, a number of publishers were interested in knowing whether I would. It's outrageous to deny people, and you have no idea how much many people need this drug, find it truly is a wonder drug for them. That's outrageous that we should deny it to people. And of course, the other so that, as I say, was the first attempt at what I've called the pharmaceuticalization of cannabis, the pharmaceuticalization of marijuana. There are lots of people who believe that that those of us who are interested in medical marijuana have launched a Trojan horse, that this is the way we're going to get the stuff out of this awful prohibition. Gave marijuana a clean slate. And the reaction was interesting. At first, the Journal of the American Medical Society wrote a glowing report of the commission. And then they received letters from a fellow by the name of Bouquet, who was the head of the UN drug section, whatever. Not the UN, the League of Nations drug thing, and critical of the AMA for writing a positive account of the LaGuardia report. And they received a letter from Harry Anslinger, who, as I say, was the head of the Narcotics Bureau, was called at that time. Regulation, without any standards, what have you. Now, fortunately, as I say, providing nobody's put any contaminants on it, and the only party that we worry about here really is the government spraying this kind of stuff. it isn't going to hurt anybody. And people use it here, without proper instruction. They can get an anxiety episode or what have you. Even that's rare, even in people who are uninstructed. I mean, how many of the people in the United States, how many of the 15 million people who use it now ever got instruction? I mean, I tell people who are older and who are marijuana virgins that I say, well, for example, there was a 67-year-old woman suffering. Well, she was having so much nausea. There isn't much you can do about it. Pancreatic cancer, you treat people, try and make them comfortable. And I skimmed the book, I guess, and I said, is there someone who can teach her how to smoke marijuana? I was sure she'd never use it.
And we are finally, where we were getting our ass kicked up and down the court, to be honest. And we are finally emerging from those dark days, and it's a very promising time. There is an incredible disconnect currently between the American public and our elected officials on the marijuana issue. More than half of the public opposes sending marijuana smokers to jail, yet state and federal officials, almost all of them, there are a few exceptions, I'm pleased to say, act as if the subject of marijuana decriminalization or marijuana legalization is in fact still the third rail of American politics. Touch it and your career is dead. Support prohibition. And that's why that when Governor Gary Johnson, as Sam mentioned earlier, it is outstanding call for legalizing marijuana, that you heard our opponents squeal loudly. They benefit greatly and have for the past 2 decades on this myth of consensus, this idea that all reasonable people support marijuana prohibition. And all of a sudden they were confronted with a twice elected popular Republican governor who said the emperor has no clothes, the drug war is a failure, and it's time to legalize marijuana. Surveys indicate that at least 72 million Americans have smoked marijuana at some point in their lives, about 19 or 20 million in the past year. Marijuana is the third most popular recreational drug of choice in America, exceeded only by alcohol and tobacco. A full 32% of the adult population acknowledge in polling that they have tried marijuana at some time in their lives. This involves a lot of successful business leaders, government leaders, including elected officials from both political parties. It's time that we reflect this reality in our state and federal legislation. Now, like most Americans, the vast majority of the millions of people who smoke marijuana are hardworking citizens who raise families, who contribute to their community, distinguishable from their non-marijuana-using peers, except for their
debate being organized here in Washington on precisely the broad theme that is central to the cases I've been discussing, as well as the war on marijuana and other substances, namely whether the majority's views of morality can ever justify laws that restrict individual freedom. Under Scalia's approach, of course, laws criminalizing marijuana use could continue to be enforced no matter how overwhelming the evidence about marijuana's lack of harm, or even indeed to its positive benefits. So these are the broad philosophical and constitutional issues that are at stake in NORML's essential efforts, with many important practical implications as well for all of us, even beyond those concerning marijuana itself. The ACLU's view, along with John Stuart Mill, is that government may not regulate voluntary conduct by mature individuals just because that conduct offends prevailing notions of morality. And we believe that of violating these laws, that would be bad enough. Worse yet, though, the government's obsessive pursuit of this inherently unwinnable and unjustifiable war. In that pursuit, all of us have lost fundamental rights, even if we aren't even suspected of using any illegal substances. As with all wars, the casualties include innocent civilians, and as is always the case with any war and any crimes, here too the victims are disproportionately poor people and members of racial minorities. Consider just a few shocking statistics on that last point. African Americans constitute 13% of the country's population and 13% of its drug users. In other words, as every government study confirms, African Americans use drugs in precisely the same proportion as other members of other racial groups. Yet when we turn from those who use drugs, the 13%, to those who are arrested for doing so, the African American representation suddenly jumps to 37%.